Mini episode 1529 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge Mini Episode 1529. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here, and we have one of our favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries with us here today, Sportsology proprietor / author, and he is, of course, one of the authors of the top 75 players in pro basketball history, along with actually yours truly, coincidentally, and the great Ben Chu. I speak, of course, of our great friend Russ Cohen, and right about this time of year, every year we get together, we preview the upcoming NHL season, and this year is no different. We're getting together to do that and to look forward to what should be a very interesting campaign. Had some sort of big tweaks in the off-season among some of the top teams in the league here, and we're going to get together and kind of prognosticate how we think the 2022-2023 season is going to play out. So with that, I reach over, I make the hot tag to my good friend Russ Cohen. Great to have you in as always, buddy. How you doing today?
Good, Rick. How are you?
Fine, thanks. It's going to be very interesting to get into all of this. As far as some of the big moves that happened here in the off-season, arguably the most unexpected one happened right here in the Buckeye State when you had one of the most talented players in the world shockingly ending up in the state of Ohio. But enough about Donovan Mitchell. I want to bring up Johnny Hockey going to Columbus. And that was something that was, I would say, equally shocking with the Donovan Mitchell news. But the signing with Columbus is not really, I think, anything anybody saw coming once the free agency period happened. Or am I wrong? You're better wired than anybody I know in the hockey media world. So if anybody would have heard anything, you would have. But, I mean, were you getting any kind of a sniff of that?
And, you know, he lives close to me. I think it just sort of morphed into that because the Flyers weren't going to happen. And when the Flyers weren't going to happen, I think that's when Gaudreau changed his course, spoke to Eric Robinson, who is another New Jersey guy, played at Princeton, played with Gaudreau's younger brother, so Gaudreau's friends with him, and he really lured him there. And then Yarmo got on the phone and, you know, made him the right offer. Like, I think that's really the way it happened. It was not a long pursuit. It was a quick pursuit. It was just, you know, I think Johnny had other plans. They weren't going to happen. So, you know, it was a good contingency plan.
Now, that's one of those things where, again, maybe it's a knee-jerk kind of a reaction to have, but you look at it, and of course, Calgary regrouped subsequently, and we'll talk about that, but that's just one of those things. On the surface, the thought is, how organizationally do you let that happen? I mean, I realize with the kind of year they were having last year, dealing him at the deadline wasn't going to be the case, but when you let arguably one of the top 5 players in the world walk away for nothing, that's just a gaping stab wound to the belly here, essentially. So in terms of how they let it get there in the first place, do you think there's any amount of money or any amount of anything they could have done that could have locked this thing down?
No, I don't think he wanted to go there. I go back. I think he didn't get an offer the year before, so they kind of threw him out there and we're like, hey, show us, Johnny. And he did. And then all of a sudden they make him this big dollar offer, and I think he was like, you know, too little, too late. I think that's really how it worked out.
Yeah, well, therein lies the danger in saying prove it, because if they do prove it, then you may not be prepared for what comes next. Clearly they weren't, and so they end up making a move here, and Calgary being a disappointment in the playoffs with the way that they went down to Edmonton, and arguably the biggest disappointment in the playoffs with how they showed up or didn't for their series with Tampa Bay was Florida. So in the end here, it's these two squads getting together and really shaking things up in a big way. Florida, of course, also making a coaching change, but beyond that, the movement of star players back and forth to try and freshen up both clubhouses, between the Goudreau signing in Columbus and this, essentially, I would say probably your biggest moves of the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, they brought in, Uyghur and Huberdeau. They certainly are a better defensive team now. I think they're going to miss some of the offense. Getting Son Milano will add a little more offense too. But, Jacob Markstrom was kind of exposed last year because he didn't have a decent defense in front of him. It's going to help. There's no way Calgary scores the same amount of points, but they probably won't give up the same amount. So I think they're in good shape. Treliving really saved his job.
Yeah, you have to think so, the way that played out. And, of course, both of these teams are going to be back very strongly in the mix here as we look at this division by division, starting with the Atlantic. Aforementioned Florida, I mean, they're going to be right there in the mix. This is a division that is brutal and impenetrable, probably, I would say, 1 through 3. Because in whatever order, I mean, you have Tampa Bay, who's been to the final the last 3 years and won 2 of them. Of course, Toronto, who came, arguably closer than ever to finally getting over the hump and beating Tampa Bay last year and getting out of the first round, although it didn't happen. Florida coming off of the President's run last year, having the best record in the league. So you got those 3. You got Boston, I think, kind of coming back to the pack a little bit. Ottawa really stepping up big time with some of their moves. You got my Red Wings that I figure are probably at least about a year or so away, but I think could be in the periphery of the playoff hunt this year based on the way that they went. Montreal coming off of just a really, really brutal season. And I got a reference here. I'm going to pop my good friend and FDH Lounge Dignitary, John Adams, because he always loves when I paraphrase this reference about the country of Brazil. You got the Buffalo Sabres, who in my book, they're the team of the future, and they always will be. So quite a grab bag of a division there, Russ.
Yeah, I think the Sabres will be good in a year also when their goaltending's figured out. They really have a lot of great players, prospects, and ones that are developing. So I'll disagree with that. But for this year, you're right. I don't love the Leafs, and I don't love their goaltending, but they should make the playoffs, although Tavares is out for 3 weeks now with an oblique. So you kind of wonder if that's the start of something bad for them. But I'll still put them in the playoffs. The Bruins, I don't think, are going to make it.
Right.
They don't have McAvoy, Grzelcyk. They're missing Marchand all at the start of the season. That's going to go for a while. That's going to hurt them. They brought in Krejci, but the fans used to scream at Krejci for not scoring. Now they're happy he's back until like a month he's not scoring, and then then they'll start yelling at him again. So I think that's problematic. Panthers are the Panthers. They're good. They signed Spencer Knight to a 3-year deal. He's definitely their next goalie. I think at some point they're going to get rid of Bob in some sort of deal, but will it be this year or next year? Not sure, but that's what they're planning on. I think the Lightning are still there, but I think the Ottawa Senators could make it. I really like the moves they made. Tim Stützle is getting there. Norris had a great year. Jake Sanderson's going to have an impact this year. Could be a Calder candidate on defense. It helps their defense. They do have a lot of youth that's starting to come around. Like I mentioned, Stützle, and they mixed in some veterans. They brought in Cam Talbot, who I think will solidify their goaltending better than they have had it in the last couple of years. That's why I don't like a lot of the Leafs goaltending, because I don't like Matt Murray anymore. I don't think he's the same. So I think Ottawa's going to be in the mix. Canadians, no. Sabres, no.
Yeah.
Red Wings, like you said, periphery.
Yeah, I think the Red Wings are going to be in it up until the end, but I think a year away from making a decent run at / in the playoffs. I've got Ottawa as the 4th team coming out of the Atlantic. I've got the Atlantic having 4 playoff teams, Ottawa being the final of them. You go to the Metropolitan Division, and
toughest in hockey.
Yeah, and I tell you, I think this is going to be a nice rivalry the next couple of years. Your Rangers in Carolina, we got a taste of it in the playoffs. And to me, they are the cream of the crop in this division. And I think they are separated by a pretty decent amount from the other teams in the division. You've got Washington and Pittsburgh, I think, both kind of fading a bit from where they've been the last couple of years, although I still do have Washington as a playoff team. I think Columbus can jump up enough to grab that fourth playoff spot, again, with the moves they were making. The Islanders, not the same team without Barry Trotz. Who saw that coming, right?
Yeah, that was interesting. And then, Anders Lee kind of threw some shade at Barry, too, a couple of weeks ago. So something happened there that was unexpected. I don't think the Islanders are a playoff team.
No, I don't either. Philadelphia, you cover them extensively.
They're not even close.
They're a ways away, and then New Jersey, they're a team that I don't know.
Periphery.
You think they could be back to the periphery? Okay, they're a team where, again, they've really kind of confused me the last year or two, because I didn't think they'd be as bad as they had been. But you think they've made it to where they could be at the periphery of a playoff contention?
I do. Jack Hughes is an emerging superstar in the league. If the goaltending can be just a little more solidified, which I think it might be now, Vanacek's pretty good. You have that going. Nemec, I think, is going to start the year in the AHL, and then eventually come up at the end of the year, possibly with Luke Hughes when Michigan's all said and done with their season. So I think there's going to be a late surge for them. So I think they'll be a periphery team.
Interesting. I've got Pittsburgh missing the playoffs for what would be probably the first time in a long time, albeit right there on the periphery. Like I said, I'm giving Columbus that fourth playoff spot over them. How do you see that shaking out with the teams sort of at the edge there, like Washington, Columbus, Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh's still really close. Jarry did really well. I was watching them practice for the last 4 days because I was at a tournament and it was at the same rink. I think they've still got a decent amount of talent. I think they may get in there instead of Washington. I think Laviolette's going to maybe have trouble this year, take a step back. They did bring in goaltending, but it's Darcy Kemper, who can be a bit of an adventure at times. And that's what the problem was last year with the Caps. Plus, they're getting a little older. I do feel like Columbus can be that other team and step up. I like Merzlikins. I think Goudreau, they still have a good blue line there. Line signed there for a few more years. That should be a really good power play. So I really do like that. I think the Penguins are still going to get in. I think it's going to be the Capitals that are out.
Interesting. Yeah, those are all going to be the teams, I think, right there in the mix, fighting for the 3 and 4 spots behind Carolina and the Rangers. You get into the Western Conference here, and the Central Division is very, very interesting. I don't look for a lot of change at the top as far as, again, Colorado is the best team in the division. I think Minnesota, St. Louis, they're both going to be fighting for that 2 seed, I think, in the division. I've got Nashville a little bit back of there. I think Winnipeg can grab one of the playoff spots there as well. I've got 5 teams coming out of the Central. I've got Dallas as a near miss, Arizona well back of that in their nice little cozy 5,000 seat arena, and Chicago to me is going to have the worst record in the league by far with the way that they are now in full on tank mode here. But it's a division that's interesting, and I think it has decent depth until you get to the bottom 2 teams. How do you see it shaking out?
Yes, there's no doubt Chicago's in tank mode. The Coyotes are going to be on the road like the first 20 games because of that new rink. So they're going to be the leaders in the clubhouse for the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. That's for sure. I look at the Jets as a non-playoff team. Even though you look at them as a playoff team, I think they're in some transition. I do like the coaching change, but and still have good goaltending. But that locker room was split. They're still going to have some trouble. Blake Wheeler, no longer captain, but still there. I think he's not thrilled being there. So I think there's some issues there. I look at the Wild, and I still think they're good enough to make it. If I had to pick the Wild or the Predators, I'm going to take the Wild. I don't know if UC Saros could replicate what he did last year. The Avalanche will win the division. The Blues will definitely be in it. The Stars are the interesting ones. Is the Stars, the Wild, or the Preds? Somebody's not making it, right? And, the Stars are really close. I really do like Ottinger. I do think Defense is good. If they could get a little more out of Sagan, I know he's coming back from injuries and is never going to be exactly the same. There's still hope. Jason Robertson, though, is still a holdout. At some point, he's going to have to sign. Push comes to shove. I'm going to say Preds out, Wild in, Stars in, Blues in, Avalanche in.
Okay. All right, so you've got 5 teams coming out of the Central as well?
Wait, I thought I just said 4.
Oh.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, all right.
Avalanche, Stars, Wild, Blues.
All right. We're taping a little later in the day. I'll blame it on that. But so in the Pacific Division, so you'll have 4 teams coming out there as well. I've only got 3. I've got Edmonton and Calgary that I think are the class of the division by a decent amount. And then the other spot from there, I'm going to give it to Vancouver, who has over the last year or two really sort of not progressed the way that some people expected them to. But I'm going to pencil them in for that spot there. LA making the playoffs last year, a little ahead of schedule in their rebuild. I've got them just falling short. Vegas barely short as well. Anaheim fairly just short of that. I've got Seattle jumping up and having a little bit of a progression here, but outside of the playoffs, and then I've got San Jose in last. So how do you see the Pacific, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, the Kraken, I think, will be a little better. I mean, Matty Beniers is terrific, and he's really matured. So he'll be a top player in the league. Shane Wright might make the team. We'll see. That could really help him. I like how the Ducks are going, but I still don't think they're going to make it either. The Sharks definitely not going to make it. They could be last in the division. It's possible. The Kings are close. The Kings have been doing things. They have money to spend. They'll spend the deadline, but right now I got to kind of pick them out. I think it's, like you said, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. I love Thatcher Demko. I think Quinn Hughes will have a big year. Keeping Miller was smart. They've gone status quo, although Besser, who always is hurt again out for a few weeks with a broken hand, I think, something like that. So still, I'm going to take them in there. And Golden Knights, even though they are super thin on depth, they might just have enough. So Logan Thompson, not exactly the best goalie you want to fuel a playoff run, but maybe at the deadline they'll be able to upgrade there. So right now, that's how I think it's going to go.
Well, they'll be looking to, and again, Vegas has been in real wheeling and dealing mode ever since they've come into the league. So if there's anybody that's going to be able to make it happen, or at least be trying very hard, it would be them. So
well, they're going to do it until they sell the last possible asset that they have. That's the way it's going to go for them.
Yeah, and and it's worked out well. I mean, first major pro
it has
sports.
Now. It's not going to in a couple of years.
Sure.
In a couple of years, Jack Eichel's going to be right back where he was with Buffalo, I think.
Oh, absolutely, and going to have a lot more city miles on him by that point as well. So yeah,
yes.
There's going to be that. But I'm looking at it partially in terms of what they've done to kind of build and maintain interest in that market. That as the first major pro sports team to market there in Vegas, they have had. An amazing following and great fan loyalty, and
they're the number one team. It's not even close. The Raiders are having no impact in that market compared to them.
Yeah, and that and again the Raiders, mismanaging so many different things over a period of time, that doesn't make things easier as well.
A period of time. It's been like 2 decades.
Oh yeah. I mean, really ever since. Yeah, I mean, the last Super Bowl that they made it to, where Chucky ended up putting the boots to him, and then the wheels kind of fell off after that.
I felt bad. I felt like they were the better team in that Super Bowl, but the center went and flew the coop and went to Mexico. Remember the starting center?
Yes,
that was bad.
Yes, that was, and I will say, interestingly, when Chris Galloway and I were doing the divisional previews this year and then making our picks in the NFL, I said, because we both picked Bills over Rams in the Super Bowl, and I said, wouldn't that be funny, 20 years to the day of, or maybe not the exact day, of, Chucky versus the Raiders in the Super Bowl. What if Von Miller comes back to take down the Rams in the Super Bowl 20 years later? How about that?
Yeah, the only thing is, I will say this, Stafford's not healthy. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that is true. And they haven't necessarily looked that great this year. And again, I could only hope from my own bitter perspective that the defending champions in the NHL, Colorado, whom I loathe as a longtime Red Wings fan, would look so shaky. But there's no reason
They're
to
not
believe.
going to look shaky.
No, there's no reason to believe that they will. Unfortunately, as part of the worst summer ever, with Golden State and Colorado both winning here, but. Colorado again, the change in goal, that is going to be something that was thought to be, I think, almost inevitable. You got your goalie coming up on a contract, coming off of the Stanley Cup here. So the only real question that there is with them going into the season, but that was the only real question they had last year, was Kempfer, and they managed to win with him. So they do have a system where they can win around a goalie.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that was an interesting thing because I covered the Cup, and there's no question that Kemper did struggle at times, and now they've potentially upgraded with Georgiev. I like Georgiev. They asked him what his system was the other day. He said his system is to stop the puck. That's the system, and that's what he is. He's just a real meat and potatoes kind of goalie. He's not the greatest backup, but when he has had to come in and be the guy, the starter for periods of time, he's done very well with that. And so I think with this, his first real starting gig, I think he's going to do very well.
See the puck, stop the puck. So is it fair to say that his goalie coach is Manny Ramirez?
Or it could be Ty Webb.
Yes.
If he's just locked in.
Very much so, yes. So as far as, I'll give you my predictions here for the season coming out of the different divisions. I'm going to say Toronto over Florida to come out of the Atlantic. I'm going to say Carolina over the Rangers in 7, getting their revenge coming out of the Metropolitan. Colorado over Minnesota in 6, I'll say, and then Edmonton over Calgary in 6. So I've got a rematch of Colorado and Edmonton in the West. I've got Carolina playing Toronto in the East. Who are the teams that you see shaking out right now for the conference finals?
Yeah, see, this is where I'm not going to go through all the playoff consternations because I haven't had a lot of sleep the last few days. But I will say that in the East, the Hurricanes will not be there. They will come up short again because of goaltending, because I don't know if Freddie Anderson will even stay healthy or do well in the playoffs. You can pick either one. And I think they still have a little bit of trouble scoring. I like Brent Burns there, but that's the issue. I think the Rangers are still going to make it to the conference finals. Whether they can get further than that, we'll mention in a moment. So I think it's going to be I'm going to go Rangers-Panthers on this one.
Okay.
I think the Panthers were sorely disappointed like Tampa was a couple of years ago, and I think they're going to have some revenge on their minds. I think the Lightning will be there, but I think they might lose at some point. So I'm going to go that as the conference final. And then over in the West, I think we're talking about Edmonton getting to the conference final. And, this is a little tougher. I'm still going to say the Avs.
Okay.
I'm going to still say it's that matchup again, because that was the matchup last year, right?
That was the matchup, yeah. And
I think it's going to be the matchup again. I do.
Yeah. And that's one where if it was going to be anybody else, I would lean towards Minnesota. If somebody puts a gun to your head and is like somebody other than Colorado, who would you say?
If it's somebody other than Colorado, maybe the Blues again.
Blues, okay, interesting.
Yeah, because this is kind of like it for them. Like Tarasenko is going to leave after this year.
Yeah.
They've made moves. They're big. They're still talented. Binnington's still a really good goalie. He's won a cup. I think they can still be very dangerous. And they have some great young players, too.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. I agree with that. Now, as far as it goes with Carolina, it's clear you and I don't see them the same way, and that's only going to become more clear the further we go here. But my thought...
look at them in the playoffs. They don't score a lot, and that's why they've not been getting far. Tell me who's going to score on the clutch for them.
Here's my thing, is I'm looking at, based on everything I'm seeing, probably not long before the playoffs, they're going to get back past Ureti. Am I right about that?
Okay. It's possible.
Okay.
I'd say that's possible.
Okay.
But he has to be healthy, too.
Yes, he's got to be healthy, but that's... Again, this is a team where, they've got, good firepower. It's a thing where you're right.
If he's back, it'll help him, and he is a clutch guy. I'll grant you that. I still don't love Freddie Anderson to to advance to a Stanley Cup. I don't.
I've actually got them making it to the final. I've got them over Toronto in 7, Colorado over Edmonton in 5. A little deja vu there. And I'm going to go out on the big limb. I think it's their year. I'm going to say Carolina over Colorado in 6 in the final. So planting my flag on the upset there. I think this. I just have a feeling about Carolina this year.
I'm going to go Rangers over Carolina not over Carolina, over Colorado in 6.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, I'd settle for either one of us being right if it meant that Colorado had to watch somebody else lift the cup. So yeah, I don't care which of us is right, as long as one of us is. And good for you if you are right, because again, the Rangers.
It's not often that I would think of picking them, but they are getting some good progress out of some of their youngsters. So it's making me think it's possible.
They are, and that's a thing where. I will say this, it really surprised me when they beat Carolina in the playoffs last year, because the Rangers really kind of proved me wrong, because they had the look to me of a team. I mean, they had a very good regular season, but it was one of those things where I just felt like they were more so a team of the future, and the further it went along in the playoffs, they were proving me wrong and saying, no, Rick, the future is now. They made a believer out of me.
Yeah, and K'Andre Miller looks kind of like a world beater at the moment. So if he's that good and Lafreniere is right, he scored a goal tonight. Trocheck was a good pickup. Like, there's some things to like there. Goaltending, obviously. Shesterkin, one of the best, if not the best in the league. So I think they could be there. I really do. I am not saying it because I grew up a Ranger fan. I just look at them and say, they've got the look of the team. They got really close last year. Why not this year?
They're right there in the mix, and again, it's not necessarily the kiss of death whenever you're picking your own team to win a championship in any sport. I did so with the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016, and who was right? This guy. So you could very much be right, Russ Cohen. It's not necessarily. It's not
possible.
A jinx. I'm refraining this year. You get back to me on 2024, but for 2023, I'm still not saying Cavs just yet, but they will be right there. And certainly, who would have said this a month ago? They're in better shape than the Celtics are.
Yeah, I did pick the Jets one year to win the Super Bowl when they had when Parcells was the coach, and they got to the championship game and lost. And I did pick the Mets in '86, and they did win because they were world beaters. I did feel like the Rangers in '94 were going to do it, and they did, but that was heart attack, making kind of games, or heart attack provoking kind of games. So it's happened before. And honestly, I don't think there's been a year since that I've picked the Rangers to win. Even when they were in it against the Kings, I didn't think they were going to beat them. So, I'm a little more bullish on them this year.
Yeah, no, you have every right to be. They are on a short list, I think, of the real contenders in this league, the teams that can go all the way. Any other notes on the season that we didn't hit here, Russ?
I think it's going to be an interesting season in the sense that the schedule has changed. So some teams are not playing the same amount of games in division anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think that could affect things down the stretch because now every team plays everybody, right? Yep. They're sticking with that. So that could be interesting. I feel like COVID won't be as big a problem this year, but I still think it's going to rear its head at some point.
Yes.
But I think the league's got a pretty good handle on it. And maybe that's why every camp had 71 players in it, because they can call back some of these guys if they start having trouble. We'll see if that's the reason that they were so large on the rosters. And I do think it'll be exciting, and I do think Colorado has a chance to repeat. So anytime somebody has a chance to repeat, it's always fun.
There will be a lot of interest around that, and a lot of the other top teams in the league as well. Tampa Bay still in the mix here, I think, to establish themselves as a real dynasty if they can get back and make it 3 out of 4, plus 4 consecutive years in the final. That would be something that we haven't seen since the 70s, or early 80s.
And, Torts in Philly will get a lot of notice, and, we're always going to talk about which coach gets fired first, and, it'll be fun.
It will be. It's going to be an excellent season. Looking forward to seeing it. Appreciate it as always, Russ Cohen. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to FDH Lounge Mini Episode 1529.